You're welcome.
Thank you for coming out, everybody. The way it's going to work tonight, I was just notified we don't have to leave at any certain time, which is cool. So if you guys can handle me for like an hour and 15 minutes, that'd be great. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll have Angela speak for like another hour. Cool. So, you guys ready to get started? Yeah. Okay, I've got a question for you guys. How many people in the room, can you guys hear me back there pretty good? Okay. How many people in the room have healed from some sort of condition or degenerative disease by adhering to a better dietary lifestyle? Wow. That's like 2/3 of the room. How many people have been on a 100% raw food diet for more than 6 months? Currently. There's a big contrast there, right? Like 70% of people have healed, while only about 10% of people are on a raw food diet. So what does that tell you? You don't necessarily need to be 100% raw to heal from disease. And you don't need to be 100% raw to be healthy. And what I'm going to do today is teach you how to heal from disease or just be healthy by adhering to either a raw food diet or an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet. And I'm hoping that this information will not only inspire you, but empower you to take your up to the next level. You guys ready to get started now? Okay, let's do it. Why raw food? What's so great about raw food? If you read all those books back there, a lot of them say they're alive, they've got enzymes. And this is great. However, nothing compares to the number one benefit of the raw food diet. There's nothing out there. The number one benefit of the raw food diet is when you adhere to a raw food diet, you're eliminating the foods that damage you. It's actually more important what you don't eat than what you actually eat. I mean, you could eat all the superfoods and raw foods until you're blue in the face. If you're going to still go to McDonald's a couple of times a day, you're probably not going to get better. I mean, anybody can nourish themselves. Anyone here can drink a couple green juices every single day. You're probably getting most of the nourishment you need. But if you're going to McDonald's a couple times a day also, it's unlikely you're going to heal from your disease. So I'm going to go between advanced stuff and beginner stuff all night long, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So it's all about what foods are obstructive to the body. In other words, what foods are damaging to the body. And I'm just going to throw an advanced curveball at you guys right now. All food is obstructive to the body. All food is damaging to the body, even raw foods. I know that sounds crazy because 99% of the human population went on a raw food diet right now. They would start becoming younger and regenerating and healing from disease. But let me give you another perspective. Myself, for example, 11 years ago, I went on a 100% raw food diet. I couldn't believe what started to happen to me. I started to become younger and regenerate at such a rapid pace, it was unreal. And for 7 years, I was going through this detox process. At some point, I kind of caught up with what I was doing. And I began to notice I started to age on the raw food diet. I mean, everybody ages, it's inevitable. And there's some factors that age people, but I intuitively knew what the number one factor that would age me was the food intake that I was eating. Becoming younger happens when you start to eat less. When you start to eat less consistently, permanently, you start to regenerate and become younger. And then what happens is at some point you catch up with what you're doing, and then you start to age again, but at a slower process because there's less obstructive, less damaging foods entering your body. So I'm on a 100% raw food diet right now. If I were to cut all my meals in half, what would happen? I would start to detox again, and I would start to regenerate and become younger again. I would start the process up again. And then at some point I would catch up with what I was doing, and I'd start to age again at a slower process because there's less damaging foods entering my body on a consistent basis. Pretty interesting. So it's all about the real question is what foods are least obstructive to the body? What foods are least damaging to the body? And the answer is raw food. I mean, if you take an apple, I mean, that's simply this 90% water with vitamins and minerals and stuff. It barely taxes the digestive system, and it's easy to digest. It barely damages you at all. So some examples and perspectives. If you go on an intermediate healthy whole food cooked food diet, which we're going to go over today, that's a lot less obstructive than the standard American diet. A 100% raw food diet is less destructive than both of those. Or eating 1 pound of fresh figs is less destructive than having 6 pounds of fresh figs. Or having a simple salad is less destructive than going to some gourmet chefing lunch with Ave over there, having 2 appetizers, 2 desserts, and 3 entrees. I've done that many times, I have to admit. But, so you're seeing what the difference is? So you don't need to be 100% raw to be healthy, but there are certain foods we want to eliminate from our diet completely for ultimate health. I mean, there's so many diets out there today. I'm sure you've heard of many of them, such as the zone diet, the macrobiotics diet, the South Beach diet, the maker diet, the college diet, and I can just go on and on and on. And all the creators of these diets, they claim to get results. They say people are healing from disease, people are losing weight. And to be honest with you, I've actually seen people adhere to these diets, and I've seen people lose weight and heal from disease. And there's one common denominator on why all these diets succeed. And that common denominator is they all leave certain foods out of their diets completely without any exception whatsoever. And the crazy thing about it all, every single one of those diets I just mentioned, they all leave out the same exact foods. This isn't rocket science here. This is why they all succeed. They all have come up with different rules, like, oh, you can't have this type of vegetable, or some reason someone says have egg whites, which is just absurd, but all these different rules come into play. But the essential factor is they all eliminate certain foods, and they all eliminate the same ones. What are these foods? I'm going to break down the foods. All the foods, in general, 5 food groups. We've got raw food. We've got refined sugars, processed starches, dairy, and animal protein. I'll do that one more time, because I see people writing it down. We've got raw foods, refined sugar, processed starches, dairy, and animal protein. So if we understand that, what you leave out of your diet completely without exception is the way to ultimate health. We want to leave out the foods, that are food groups that are the most damaging to the body. And what a lot of people do is they become animal activists, which is a great thing. And what they do is they eliminate the animal protein and the dairy, which is great. However, a lot of the time they load up on, guess what? Refined sugars and processed starches to compensate for what they left out. And from a scientific standpoint, the refined sugars and the processed starches are the 2 most damaging foods. And we're going to go over exactly what those are in a second. And that is what every single one of these diets eliminate completely without exception. Crazy, right? I mean, from a moral standpoint, we want to get rid of the animal protein, of course. But from a scientific standpoint, it's the refined sugars and processed starches. And let's just go over these real quick. Who can name a refined sugar? It's like, sugar. Yeah, sugar. White sugar, and that's in cookies, candy, cakes, all these other wonderful things. High fructose corn syrup. Anything that's been processed over 118 degrees, that's sugar. It's probably the easiest thing to give up. I mean, these days there's raw chocolate and raw goodies. I mean, refined sugars just go out the door. The processed starch. Probably the most damaging, the most addictive, and the hardest to give up. Who can name a processed starch? Bread. Everyone said bread. Pasta. I was dreaming about bread for 4 months after I went raw. I was having dreams about it. It was crazy.